Hello, everyone. Today's date is April 14, 2024. We are having a Israeli-Palestinian Federal Confederation government simulation with Ziad AbuZayyad. We are proposing the creation of a common federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine, a government that will be based on a constitution based on secular principles for the entire area that includes Gaza, the West Bank, Israel, and Jerusalem, of course. We are proposing a federal government that will be independent and separate from the Israeli and the Palestinian government, a government that will be working together with the Israeli and the Palestinian government, but separate and independent of them, that will have its own political capital, based on a constitution, based on fairness, based on equality, and based on justice. We have a constitution, and you can read the constitution by going to ipconfederation.org. My name is Joseph AbuZayyad. You can reach me at josephabuzar@gmail.com. Today's guest, we invite different guests at each simulation. We hold the simulations every 2 weeks, and today's guest is Ziad AbuZayyad. AbuZayyad is a member of the Palestinian National Council, the Parliament of the PLO. He is a former Palestinian Authority minister and a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council. He is a former member of the bilateral negotiation team in post-Oslo Accord, Cairo, which led to the creation of the Palestinian Authority. He was the head of the Palestinian delegation to multilateral negotiations on arms control and regional security. Mr. AbuZayyad was the deputy chair of Euromed Parliament Political Committee and the first representative of the Palestinian Parliament to the Council of Europe. He participated in numerous conferences on the Middle East conflict, interfaith dialogue, and conflict resolution. Mr. AbuZayyad is regularly interviewed by the Israeli and the Palestinian and international media on the political situation. He is the co-editor of Palestine-Israel Journal and a weekly columnist at Al-Quds Arabic daily newspaper. AbuZayyad studied law and graduated from Damascus University Law School. On April 28, we will have Tony Glock, who is a special advisor on the Middle East to the Oxford Research Group. On May 12th, we will have Professor Michael Steinberg, who is a professor of history at Brown University. On May 26th, we will have Professor Avner Cohen, who is a non-proliferation and terrorism expert. On June 9, we will have Professor Ori Yehudai, who is a professor at Ohio State University, teaches Zionism and modern Israel, the Arab-Israeli conflict. These are the people that participated previously. We have many that participated. Some participated more than twice, and many have made strong endorsement to the formula that we are proposing for a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine. These are people that were invited and refused or declined to come for one reason or another. If you know some of them, ask them to join in future simulations. We've invited them many, many times, but unfortunately, they declined or refused. The simulation will take approximately 120 minutes, including a segment of question and answer for Mr. AbuZayyad. the simulation has segments. Each segment lasts between 5 and 7 minutes, and the audience is asked to act as parliament members, Palestinians and Israelis. They're asked to vote, and they are asked, and then Mr. AbuZayyad will be asked to comment about what he has seen, reminding you he is a member of the Palestinian government, so his perspective will be from that opinion. We have a video that explains the essence of our formula. It takes 2 minutes, and I'd like to play it.
The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians has endured for generations. And instead of time healing the wounds, it's only caused the anger to fester and the violence to grow. But what if there was a way to alleviate the tension? Something that may not outright solve every problem, but at least create a forum that encourages a peaceful compromise. Welcome to the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, a common third government between the Israeli and Palestinian citizens, specifically designed to foster peace, tolerance, and economic prosperity between the two nations. Here's how it works. First off, both Israel and Palestine will keep their respective governments. Israel's Knesset and the Palestinian National Authority will remain unchanged. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation, IPC, will be a third entity acting as a unifying agent between the two. The IPC will comprise 300 parliament members elected from 300 districts in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. Above them will preside a president and vice president, one Israeli and one Palestinian. In order for the IPC to pass a law, it will require a 55% majority from its Israeli representatives, as well as a 55% majority from its Palestinian representatives, thereby preventing either side from monopolizing the legislature. Of course, the IPC won't undermine the political power of either the Israeli or the Palestinian government. At any time, Israel or Palestine may veto a law passed by the IPC. If neither side vetoes, the law is passed. And the two nations are another step closer to resolution. Please help us make this a reality. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. We might speak different languages, but we all mean the same thing.
So we are asking you to help us make it a reality. And we are asking you at this time to vote. Do you support a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine? We will compare the vote that we have now to the future, to the vote at the end of the simulation. But at this time, please vote. Do you support a federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine? So as many of you can vote, I know some of you on the phone cannot vote, but as many of you, if you can vote, that would be appreciated. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds for you to vote. And then we will compare the vote. We'll see if we change some hearts. Okay, so can you publish the vote?
Joseph, if I may, I cannot get on Zoom. Zoom won't connect me, and I'm probably not the only one. This is Shlomo.
Okay, I apologize, but I'm glad you're on the phone. I don't know why you have a problem, but whatever it is, I'm glad you're on. So 97% voted yes, and 3% voted no. So hopefully we will be able to win that one person who voted no to change his mind by the end of the simulation today. I hope you stay and tell us if you change your mind. The simulation will is to explain how a common federal government could make peace. Mr. AbuZayyad is not a representative of the IPC. He was invited to stress test, to tell us what's his opinion about that. Why does he think it's a good idea or a bad idea? The common federal government will have its own narrative. It's not going to be following the Israeli narrative or the Palestinian narrative. It's going to have its own narrative, and the narrative is what's good for the people of the entire area, Gaza, the West Bank, Israel and Jerusalem based on a federal parliament that will vote and will exchange ideas and will have an equal opportunity to vote. I expect that we will have a rigorous discussion. We are going to simulate as if we are the federal government, and we are going to have a rigorous discussion just like a future federal government will have. We do not preclude other formulas for peace. In fact, we invite other formulas for peace, but we think that our plan is the best. We're not claiming exclusivity. We will ask Mr. AbuZayyad to be fair and to judge our plan based on whether the formula that we are presenting could make peace. And what is the alternative? Is there another alternative to making peace other than what we are proposing? And how does the formula that we are proposing is it offering less than the alternative? We are proposing, or we are demonstrating, we're not claiming to be the government, but we are demonstrating how a common federal government could pass legislation that will be acceptable to both the Palestinians and the Israelis, and that they will not be able to veto them. What do I mean by acceptable? I mean that they will not be able to veto reasonable legislation because they will lose legitimacy within their own people, the people of Israel and Palestine, and internationally. We are asking you to look at the big picture when we are presenting the legislation. Please avoid technical arguments because obviously we are very limited by time and we cannot get into technicalities. We're asking you, please look at the big pictures. We're asking you to refrain from comments during the simulations. However, we encourage questions. Questions are very, very good, and we encourage them. A confederation government, as we define it, is confederation governments exist worldwide to address specific conflicts. Some governments refer to themselves as federal governments, while others use the term confederation. Definitions are not fixed and evolve with changing realities. In the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the IPC defines confederation as a shared government for the people of Israel and Palestine, guided by democratic principles outlined in the IPC Constitution, which can be found at ipconfederation.org. That's what I told you initially is our website where you can read the Constitution and you can read questions and answers. This is a simulation. It's not a lecture. And we are asking you to understand that we are proposing a model, and in the simulation, we are mimicking the model in order to explain how a common federal government could make peace. We are asking again, please refrain from comments. So if you see a photograph of this airplane and you say, how does this plane fly? That's a question. That's a legitimate question. We are asking you, in fact, we are encouraging people to ask questions. But if you say airplanes are dangerous, I will never board an airplane, that means that is a comment. Please refrain from commenting. You can use the chat feature and you can speak at the end and make your comments. But during the simulation, please respect our process, ask substantive, clarifying questions, and let us move on. And I'm going to be insisting on that because we have a lot of business to do and we want to have a fair opportunity to explain our formula for peace. if you have not been paying attention up to now, please do so now. In the simulation, we are going to be acting under these assumptions. The first assumption is that we were able to obtain major funding, which allowed us to spend a year-long campaign to promote the election. In other words, that we were able to advertise the benefits of the federal government, that we were able to recruit people in Israel and Palestine to run for parliament and to run for president and vice president, and to have a year-long honest discussion about the benefit of a federal government and what is the alternative. So that's the first part of the assumption that we are acting under. The second part is that we actually held the election, that 14 million people, excluding children, were given the opportunity to vote. That's in the area of Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza. And that the election lasted 3 months, not 1 day, not 1 week, but 3 months. You also are asked to assume that 5 million people voted, that 3 million Palestinians voted, and 2 million Israelis voted. That's part of the assumption. You also have to assume that the president, we elected a president. The president received 1.5 million votes, and a vice president received 1.3 million votes, and they will rotate. The president will serve for the first 2 years, and the vice president of the other nationality will serve the second as president, and the president will become vice president after 2 years. I want you to assume, for the purpose of this simulation, in order to help me conduct the simulation as if the election has taken place, I am going to be acting as the president, so that you are aware. I never intend to run for president. I'm not even qualified under the Constitution to be the president, but I am just acting as such during the simulation. I also want you to assume that 300 parliament members were elected in 300 districts, and each district encompasses 47,000 people, and each parliament member represents his or her district of 47,000 people. So I'm going to ask, before I go to Mr. AbuZayyad, I'm going to ask you now, the audience, before I ask Mr. AbuZayyad to give his comments or question, the audience, do you in the audience have questions regarding these assumptions? Please raise your hand or speak up. Do you have any questions regarding these assumptions? Okay, I see no hand. Oh, okay. Monica Byrne, please ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I was curious as to the differential between the voter turnout, Palestinians versus Israelis. And I'm also curious, when you say Palestinians versus Israelis, are you including Palestinian Israelis in the Israeli constituency, or are you assuming Jewish Israelis and then all Palestinians, whether Israeli citizens or not, are part of the Palestinian constituency?
Hey, Palestinian Israelis are Israelis.
Okay.
And Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, and but we are not defining the definition of who the people are. Makes no difference, because we are acting under the assumptions that all 14 million people are allowed to vote, whether they are Israelis, whether they are Palestinian Israelis, whether they are Israeli Palestinian in the West Bank or Gaza, makes no difference. The only time it does maybe make a difference is when parliament members are elected. But as far as the voters, everyone is the same. Henry.
And why did you predict 3 million Palestinians voting versus only 2 million Israelis?
That's based on on many, many years that we've been doing these simulations, and we believe that the Palestinians are more accepting of a federal government than the Israelis. That's
Got it.
our
Thank-
just a arbitrary decision based on years of doing this. Henry.
So two short questions. Is one of the assumptions that all Palestinian political prisoners will be released from Israeli prisons before the elections? And the other question is the assumption that Palestinian refugees who were forced out or who left Palestine and are now outside of the borders of Palestine, will they be able to participate in these elections? Two questions about political prisoners and about refugees.
Both the answer to both questions is no. There is no assumption that the political refugees, the prisoners have been released, and the Palestinians who have been expelled from Palestine, and Jews who do not live in the area, and Israelis who do not live in the area will not be able to vote and will not be able to be elected. In order to vote or be elected, you need to be a citizen of Israel or Palestine and a resident for 6 months. Professor Narayan Singh Rao, what is your question?
Yeah, I think the situation we see for such a kind of government, there must be a prolonged process of reconciliation.
What is your question?
My question is that will it be possible for the Jews and the others to live together? Because situation which we see is quite.
Is your question, could Jews and Muslim and Christians, the Palestinians, Israel live together?
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Any other, and they do. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So let's go to Mr. Ziad AbuZayyad and ask him to make his comments or ask questions. Mr. AbuZayyad.
Thank you, Joseph, for inviting me to participate in this meeting and to give me the opportunity to meet with your distinguished guests. Before I speak, I would like to ask you to be patient with me and to accept my frankness and openness if I say things which you do not like or you don't agree with, but this is my nature. All people who know me know that I am very, very open. I say what I believe in, and sometimes that could be impolite, but I believe I am polite.
Perfect.
First of all, I think we should think out of the box. The idea of the two-state solution is not relevant anymore, and the idea of the confederation or federation is a good idea. I think it is a good idea. My impression from looking on the previous simulations is that the whole formula which you have did not have a real Palestinian input when you were formulating this project. And there is the Palestinian impact and the Palestinian representation in forming this plan is missing. And there is a number of misconceptions which I noticed along the way when I saw the different sections of this plan. However, I'm here tonight. I will make some comments if you allow me. And I would say that it's not, and forgive me for saying that, I think it's not good that you always push people and ask them only to ask questions and not make comments. Because if people make comments, this will help you to improve the plan you have. If you believe that the plan which you have is super duper and nothing could be better than that, and you want people only to ask questions, I think you are not right. I think it's wrong. You should allow people to make comments and to think about their comments and try to improve what you have. The product you have, it should not be a final product. It should be something to work on it, to develop it, and to make it better. And you cannot make it better if you keep only pushing people not to make comments, only to ask questions. I will stop at this point.
Okay, so let me respond. You said that the Palestinian perspective is not being taken into sufficient consideration, but you haven't said how. In what way?
Tell you, I give you an example. You said that the Israeli Knesset and the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority is not the counterpart of the Israeli Knesset. The counterpart of the Israeli Knesset is the Palestinian Legislative Council. We had a parliament, which is the Palestinian Legislative Council. Unfortunately, from 2007, after the split between Hamas and Fatah, we could not have elections, but it is a demand by every Palestinian from President Abbas to run elections. Your plan will not be implemented today. So you should base your plan on strong basis that there should be a relation between the Israeli Knesset and the Palestinian Legislative Council. In some places in your plan, you speak about the Israeli government, the Palestinian government, and Hamas. You cannot exclude Hamas and make it a separate body and have three bodies in this case. Sometimes you don't speak frankly and openly about East Jerusalem as Palestinian East Jerusalem, as an occupied city, that there are Palestinians in Jerusalem, and not only in the West Bank and Gaza. There are some few examples here and there, and my advice to you, if you want to make your plan better than it is now, try to think about a Palestinian component who will help you to develop your plan and have it representing the Palestinian aspect in it.
All right, let me respond to you. You are correct. The video referred to the Knesset and the Palestinian National Authority, and it did not refer to them in the same way. You're correct in that sense. However, the video is not part of the Constitution. The video was just made to explain the concept, okay? The Constitution is the basis upon which we are proposing the federal government, not the video. Now, with respect to your comments about me not allowing comments, you are correct. I agree with you that comments are a terrific thing. However, because we are trying to explain how this common federal government will work, we did allow comments at the beginning. And what happened was the comments destroyed the whole event. People start arguing, and still people make comments. We have Palestinians, we have Israelis, we have pro-Palestinians, pro-Israelis, and the whole thing was kidnapped. So this is why I am restricting the comments to the chat, because we are spending tremendous amount of efforts to explain what the federal government is all about. And then when we do the simulation, the whole thing is being destroyed. That's why I'm being very, very particular about comments. I just want to have an opportunity to explain what it is. And then at the end, we give them an opportunity to make their comments. But you cannot have comments during the time that you are presenting the idea itself. Tony.
Yeah, and to be fair, you do allow comments at the end of the simulation to include that factor, but also be able to get on with it.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the simulation itself. We are going to be asking you to participate in the simulation. We are asking people to, first of all, we need volunteers to act. This is a simulation, to act as a Palestinian president. Do I have a volunteer to act as Palestinian president in this simulation? That include Mr. AbuZayyad. Are you willing to be the Palestinian president in this simulation?
No.
Okay.
No,
So
and I must say one thing more than in addition to what I had said.
sure.
Since 2006, I left the Palestinian Legislative Council. I lost my seat in Jerusalem for Hamas because during the 3 years before 2006, I was prohibited by Israel to enter Jerusalem and communicate with my constituency. I lost my seat in 2006, and since then, I disengaged myself from the Palestinian Authority and from any official position. I devoted my time for reading and writing and speaking. And therefore, anything I say here, it's my personal view, doesn't represent anybody or any Palestinian position. It's my personal position. Sometimes if I read my column in Al-Quds, sometimes they may agree with me, disagree with me. One time they say that I'm sympathetic with Hamas, the other time they say I'm sympathetic with the Fatah. But I say what I believe in. So you cannot satisfy everybody, but this is my view. So what I say here, it's only my personal view.
terrific. Yeah, that's noted.
Joseph?
We need to move on. Do we have a parliament member? Do we have a president of the Palestinian government? Volunteer. Palestinian parliament president. We need a Palestinian president.
I could do it, Joseph, again, if you want.
Okay,
Nobody else wants to do it.
terrific. Okay, do we have a volunteer to act as Israeli Prime Minister?
I'll do it if no one.
Joseph, I have a question.
Go ahead.
You're asking for volunteers for president and prime minister, and those are executive positions. At the same time, we're supposed to simulate sort of a binational parliament. So the parliament is legislative, not executive. So isn't there a kind of a contradiction that instead of asking for president or so the executive branch, there should be only be a president of the parliament, so to speak?
No, we have,
What is-
no, I am the president of the federal government. Okay, wait till you see the whole story. Do we
No, but
have,
you're talking about the government or the parliament, because
I
it
am
seems
the
that,
president of the federal government.
okay, the federal government, that's executive branch. But what about the
I am the
legislative branch?
president, and then we're gonna have a Palestinian parliament. Just be patient. Do we have a volunteer to be Israeli Prime Minister? Professor Narayan, are you willing to be Israeli Prime Minister? You need to unmute. You need to unmute. Professor
I
Narayan.
think it's better someone who understands Israeli politics better.
Okay, do we have someone who is willing to be, who understands Israeli? He may understand Israeli. Professor Narayan, do you feel like you understand Israeli politics?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're willing to be Israeli Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific.
He had another, there was
I'm
another
sorry.
volunteer, Baruch Shalev had his
Yeah,
hand.
Baruch Shalem was.
No, it's all right. I'm happy. Professor Maran will do it.
Okay.
So I can have. Okay, wonderful.
Okay. All right. Now we're moving
Someone
to,
is trying to get in and he cannot. The chairperson of the Peace NGO, Eli Safran. If sorry to disturb, if you can let him in.
okay. We are now moving to be asking you to act as parliament member. I'm showing you a map of the area of Israel, Palestine, and I'm asking you, the audience, to act as parliament member of the federal government. You are one of the 300 parliament members. I'm showing you a map. You could be either Israeli or Palestinian parliament members in this area. Out of 300, you'll represent 47,000 people. You'll need to make a choice. Are you Israeli or are you Palestinian? Please vote right now so we know how many we have parliament members, Palestinian or Israeli. Please make your conscious and honest decision and remain in that capacity throughout the simulation. Remember, we are a separate and independent government of the people of Israel and Palestine. Okay, giving you 5 more minutes, 5 more seconds, I'm sorry. Okay, we have 17 out of 29 Palestinian. And we have 12 Israeli. Okay. You are, can you share the results, please? 17 and 12 Palestinian. So you are going to be remaining as Palestinian and Israeli parliament member in this simulation, and you are given the right to vote. So that it's clear, the Palestinian president is not entitled to vote on the legislation because he's in a separate government. The Israeli prime minister is not entitled to vote. He's in Israel in a separate government. I am not entitled to vote because I am, first of all, technically Zoom would not allow me to vote, but also because I am the president, I am in the executive branch, I cannot vote on legislation. It's only the legislative branch that can vote on legislation. All right. Let me ask Mr. AbuZayyad, do you have an issue with whether it is possible to create a federal government based on the assumptions that was given to you?
Well, I think I made my point clear. The assumptions which we made in the beginning, I don't think they deal with the formation of the federal government.
Okay, I understand that. But what if we actually hold the election? And are you saying that we will not be able to hold the election? Are you saying Palestinians will not vote? Are you saying Israelis will not vote?
I believe that we have a long way to go along before we come to elections for the Confederation.
Okay.
Well, I'm not isolated from what's happening on the ground. We have a situation of occupation, we have denial of the Palestinian rights, denial of the Palestinian existence. We have a government in Israel which do not recognize that there is a Palestinian partner. So how come you want them to recognize to have a confederation between Israelis and Palestinians? There is a lot of things which had to be done in order to prepare the ground for the creation of a confederation or a federation, because as you know, there is a huge difference between federation and confederation. I believe, as I said in the beginning, that we need the creative ideas, and the federation is a creative idea. The confederation is a creative idea, which may lead us by time through years to come to reach a situation of a federation. It's a good idea, but good idea, we need a lot of homework to prepare until we reach to that point of creating a confederation or a federation.
All right, so let me take you to the assumptions. What specific area in the assumptions could not be obtained within the next year?
Well,
Give me,
you want to raise funding, but funding for what? You want to raise funding to promote elections.
correct.
But in practice, you will not be able to
Why
run
not?
elections.
Why not?
Because the Israelis will not allow you. Palestinians under occupation will not accept.
The election takes place online. What? how
Okay,
could it-
okay, but people will not participate. You
How
need
do
to
you know that?
convince.
If we
Okay,
have,
I'm telling.
you're
I tell you what.
participating.
Listen, I'm living here. I'm living
Yeah,
here.
but the idea is not being presented. You live in the reality that was created by Israel and the Palestinians. We are speaking about a different reality, a different.
Can you guarantee a majority of Israelis who will support the idea of confederation or federation?
No, I cannot. I am speaking about people voting. 3 million Palestinian voted and 2 million Israelis. That's
But
not.
you will not have these numbers. You are
How do
very
you know
ambitious.
that? How do you know that?
Because I'm here. I know people.
Yeah, but you live. You live inside the box.
Okay.
You live inside the box. This is
If
the reality.
If you are
Okay.
more expert,
All right, I'm not going to argue with you.
expert on Palestinians and Israelis than myself, then I agree with you. You go
All
ahead.
Right. Okay. All right. So your objection is I shouldn't say objection. Your doubt is whether Palestinians and Israelis will vote. You have a problem with the idea that 5 million people will vote. That's your main doubt, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. And the response to that is that Palestinians and Israelis are not a monolithic society. They don't all think the same. Not all Israelis think the same. Not all Palestinians think the same. And you have no basis upon which to make that determination, because that election has not been presented, has not been advertised, has not had the opportunity to be discussed. And I don't think that you have any basis upon which to say that you doubt 5 million people will vote. It's just.
And you don't have any basis to say that what you are saying is right. So
Correct.
we don't have any basis for our what we are saying about.
Correct. I agree.
Okay, that's agreed.
I agree. So I am saying, let's have it done and let's see. By the way, whenever there was any election to replace a king or an emperor, and to the same question that we are discussing right now was presented 200, 300, 400, and 500 years ago. People didn't know how many people would vote, but they were always surprised. All right. Now we have two Libby. I hope, is Libby Arney here?
I'm here.
Okay, Libby Traubman. Libby, would you be so kind as to read the Constitution?
Yes, I will. We believe that Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed human rights and freedom. The Israeli-Palestinian Confederation does not intend to supersede or supplant the Palestinian or Israeli governments, nor to abrogate or undermine any agreements between those governments. We recognize the need to work with the Israeli and Palestinian governments. Our purpose is to resolve conflicts and to expand the relationship between Palestinians and Israelis in a fair and equitable manner. We believe in equal rights under the law, guaranteed human rights, and freedom for all. We voluntarily give the legislatures and the governments of Israel and Palestine veto power over legislation we pass relating to the domain of control of those governments. We believe in the separation of power between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. We believe in the creation of a permanent secular government for all the people, including in Israel and Palestine, residing in Israel and Palestine. We believe in having a separate judicial branch relating to IPC legislation with Israeli and Palestinian judges, with a system to avoid biased decisions based on nationality.
All right, so the idea is that we have no problem. Constitutionally, we are required to honor any agreement between the Israeli and the Palestinian governments, including if they agree to two-state or one-state or any other solution or any other agreements between them is constitutionally, we are required to honor them. And we give them a veto power over legislation which they which affects their sovereignty. And if it affects their sovereignty, the Israeli and the Palestinian governments have a veto power. Does anyone, let's go to the audience first and then to Mr. AbuZayyad. Does anyone have any questions? Please, questions regarding the Constitution. Gail, you have a question, please. You need to unmute. Gail, you need to unmute.
Okay, so I don't have a question, but I think something needs to be clarified.
No, we're only dealing with questions. I'm sorry. Do you
Well,
have? We
my
have
question-
time for
okay,
comments at the end, okay?
I'm going to frame it, Joseph, as a question.
Please.
The question is that many people here, including our guests, don't understand that this is a simulation and not reality. What our guest is speaking to is that before this is able to be constituted, there has to be educational work on the ground. And I think that's what's being lost in translation here.
Okay.
So
All right.
my question
So the
that
question is, why is this being lost in the translation? The answer is because people are not paying attention. We said that many times in the simulation. This is a simulation.
Okay.
Does anyone have any
But what
questions?
Mr. AbuZayyad is pointing out is that the education for this has to be done on the ground first. Before, this is the ideal, and I agree with it. This is the ideal. But the education on the ground
that's part of the simulation, Gail. That's part of the
Okay,
simulation.
fair enough.
All right.
But I don't think that that's been clarified.
Okay. Any questions regarding the Constitution? All right. Hearing no questions, let's go to Mr. AbuZayyad. Mr. AbuZayyad, you are our guest. You are allowed to ask questions and to make comments before we vote to ratify the Constitution.
Thank you. I think the Constitution is great, but I don't know why you use "we believe." And if we take the first item and the fifth item, they are overlapping on each other. And instead of saying we believe that Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed human rights and freedom, why don't you say Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed human rights and freedom? Why you say we believe?
What paragraph are you?
The first item.
We believe
Why
that
do you
Palestinians
say-
and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law.
Yeah, why you say we believe? Why
Because-
don't you state
because in the
the
Constitution-
principle? No. If this is a principle, then it should be very strong, very clear cut. You say Palestinians and Israelis are entitled to equal rights under the law and guaranteed human rights and freedom, full stop. You don't need to say we believe.
And what's wrong
And the
with
same,
saying
and
we
the same
believe
on
in it?
item 5. Why you say we believe in equal rights? It's if you believe in something, it doesn't mean that others will abide with what you believe.
True.
If this is a constitution, the constitution should state clearly what are the basic principles of this constitution.
Okay.
So I advise you to reconsider all this drafting. It's a linguistic comment.
Yeah.
Saying we believe it makes us weak.
Okay, but I tend to, I'll have to think about it. It makes sense what you're saying. However, this is just a summary of the Constitution. The Constitution is actually in the website. I sent it to you. So this is just a summary.
I did not have the time to read the Constitution, but I
Okay.
hope that in the Constitution, it is in a different phrasing.
Yeah.
It should be clear. I am a lawyer.
Yeah.
I was the chair of the legal committee in the Palestinian parliament. I drafted numerous laws in different aspects. Law should be clear.
Okay. All right. That's very well noted, and I'll look it up in the Constitution itself. You're the first one who made that comment.
Yeah, this is very important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So now that you are Israeli and Palestinian parliament members, you need to ratify the Constitution. I say need because in order to participate in the parliament, you must ratify the Constitution. Otherwise, you will be expelled from the parliament. Let's go to the Palestinian parliament members. Please ratify the Constitution, Palestinian parliament members. Okay, publish the vote. 15 voted yes, 2 voted no. So the 2 that voted no are expelled from the parliament. You're not allowed to vote. And the person who received the second number of votes in your district will be asked to ratify the Constitution and will be the parliament member. So you are not permitted to vote any longer in any legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Please vote. Okay, publish the vote. 11 voted yes, 1 voted no. He or she will also be expelled from the parliament, will not be participating in the parliament, cannot vote. The 11 that voted yes are accepting the Constitution and are willing to swear allegiance to the Constitution. So we have Palestinians and Israelis who accept the Constitution, willing to swear allegiance, and we are going to move on. We now have a monumental event in the history of Israel and Palestine. Never in the history of Israel, Palestine, in human history, was there ever the creation of a common parliament based on a constitution, based on democracy, that separate between religion and government, that is common to the entire population, that was voted upon and legitimized by the entire population. This is an event of momentous historical significance, and it reverberates throughout the world. We are the first government in Israel, Palestine, that is able to make a common democratic government. And we are going to capitalize on that because this reverberates all over the world and sending good vibes to the entire world. And I am, as the president, I intend to capitalize on the significance of this throughout the world. All right, let's go to our first order of business, and that's granting a veto power to the separate government. Let me see, is Libby Arnie? Libby Arnie, are you here?
I'm here. The other Libby?
Yeah, okay, Libby. Yeah, go ahead, Libby Trautman, go ahead.
All right. So this is granting a veto power to the separate governments. The Confederation is the government of the entire population of Israel and Palestine from the river to the sea. We recognize the Palestinian and Israeli governments and are seeking their cooperation to implement our vision for peace by giving them a veto. We will do our utmost to satisfy the essential needs of each government. We are pleading with the Palestinian and Israeli public to understand that while we would like to pass the best legislation possible to improve their lives, under these constraints, a perfect legislation is not possible. We hereby bestow a veto power relating to legislation affecting sovereignty to the following: the government of Israel on issues in which it is indispensable, the Palestinian government on issues in which it is indispensable. In the event of changes in the entirety of the Israeli or Palestinian governments, the legislation may be amended or repealed subject to the IPC Constitution. The Parliament will decide on indispensability. Vetoes may be bestowed individually or collectively.
Libby, could you read this as well?
All right, this is dispensable versus indispensable. A government is indispensable if its cooperation is necessary to implement IPC legislation. Examples of indispensable: use of land, police force, removal of the wall. Examples of dispensable: the IPC budgets, ratifying the Constitution, and appointing IPC ministers.
All right, let me go to the audience first. Before I go to Mr. AbuZayyad, do you have any questions regarding this veto power? Questions? Please raise your hands. Okay, I see no questions. I'll go to Mr. AbuZayyad. Mr. AbuZayyad, do you have any comments or questions regarding this first legislation that we are passing as the common federal government?
My question is, how can you guarantee that none of the two governments will misuse the right of deciding about an issue, whether it is dispensable or indispensable?
We cannot guarantee. We are a political power that was given legitimacy by 5 million people. And we are going to use that legitimacy in order to negotiate, if necessary, with the Israeli and the Palestinian governments to find the best legislation that will be acceptable to them. But if they become totally unreasonable, either the Palestinian or the Israeli, we, the parliament, being the legitimate government, the only legitimate government in Israel and Palestine, and I am as the president, I intend to put pressure on them and, if necessary, embarrass them in front of their own constituents, whether they're Israelis or Palestinians or whether around the world. That's how democracy works. Democracy never guaranteed. That's how democracy works. Any other questions? All right. Let's have the Palestinian parliament members first. Please vote on this legislation. Are you willing to give a veto power to the separate Israeli and the Palestinian parliament members only? Please vote. We need 55% of the Palestinian parliament members to agree to pass this legislation. Can you please publish the vote? 82% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Okay. Publish the vote. 71% of the Israeli parliament members agreed of this legislation. So this legislation has passed by the Israeli and the Palestinian parliament members. And by the way, the Israeli and the Palestinian government do not have a veto power over this veto power because it does not, they are dispensable with regard to this legislation. All right, let's go to the next substantive legislation, and that is making peace with Iran, Lebanon, and Syria. Libby, could you please read out the legislation?
We are the parliament members of the Confederation Government of Israel, Palestine. We are the only legitimate government in the region. Our people have experienced wars and violence for over 100 years. The Israeli and Palestinian governments have failed to bring peace to the people in Israel and Palestine. Therefore, we are taking the initiative to protect all the people in Israel, Palestine, and provide them with peace. To achieve this, we are forming our own delegations to directly meet with the authorities of Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran for the purpose of making peace in the region. Our intention is to demand that all these governments and entities agree to cease violence and threats against each other and work towards a lasting peace, and to work as a facilitator and promoter of peace between these governments. Our goal is to be fair and objective and to expose any governments or entities that pose a threat to our people.
So the Israeli and the Palestinian governments are dispensable when it comes to this legislation, meaning that we can act on our own. We do not need to give them a veto power. There is nothing for them to veto. However, we need to have the parliament agree on this. And we are basically saying we are the people of Israel and Palestine in the whole area. We are being threatened day in and day out with violence. Not only being threatened, we are actually being physically abused by the war that is including Israel, Iran, Lebanon, and Syria, and the war between Hamas and Israel. And we want peace. So we are creating our own delegation to negotiate peace and to force, if necessary, peace in the area. Does anyone have any questions regarding this legislation? Gail, please ask your question. You need to unmute, Gail.
Okay, my question is how do you force peace?
Well, by
It's
exposing
a rhetorical,
the government.
it's a rhetorical question. How do you force peace?
You expose the governments. We are the people of Israel and Palestine. We are Christians, Muslims, and Jews, and we are planning to travel to Iran and to Syria and to Lebanon and obviously to Israel and expose the Israeli and the Palestinian and the Iranian and the Hezbollah and to the fact that they are threatening Christian, Muslims, and Jews at the same time. And we want to get to the real issues that are between them and be an honest mediator if necessary, with the understanding that we are the only legitimate government in the area and we are the only legitimate government that represents the people of Palestine and Israel.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question. So what you're proposing is an educational component, which was my original point. And I think it's our guest's original point as well. So the follow-up question is, how do you believe that a veto power is at all democratic? There's all kinds of veto powers going on with the war on Gaza. And where is that taking us? Veto powers don't
Okay,
work.
the veto power is given to the Israeli and the Palestinian governments because we have no other choice.
Of course we have other choices. Veto
Okay.
powers are strong arm mechanisms.
All right.
Of course we have other choices.
Okay, then you tell us what is the choice during the comments, but we give them a veto
No,
power.
the choice is negotiation. Veto just silences people and
All right.
removes their democratic power. The choice is negotiation.
Okay, well, negotiations could last forever. The
Well, it's
Israeli-Palestinian conflict has.
So
had
here's
negotiations.
my follow-up to that. We're vetoing.
Wait, no.
Okay,
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has had negotiations for 75 years. Okay?
not really.
We need to propose reasonable legislation and give the Israeli and the Palestinian the requirement to say whether they veto it or not.
But
Not to
vetoing
negotiate.
ends the
Negotiation, they gives them
conversation.
a way out. All right, I'm
You
not gonna argue
understand
with
that
you.
vetoing ends the
Look, I'm
conversation?
not gonna argue with you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have another question. Do you understand that vetoing something ends a conversation?
That's not a fair question. That's just changing our argument into in a bad faith to claim that it's a question.
It's not in bad faith at all. That's exactly, we're here because of
Look,
veto power.
okay.
We are here now, sir, because of the veto power. I am sorry, but this is going
What
down.
veto power? What veto power are you talking about?
I'm now going to give you the example of the veto power to prevent a ceasefire in Gaza.
There is
That
no
veto
federal
power. That veto power.
Okay,
has
look, I'm
led
not
to
gonna argue with
300
you. The argument is over, okay?
Why?
Does
Because you
anyone-
say so. Why?
Okay.
Because you say so, sir.
Yes, I said it
But
up.
you're not.
I am
but-
entitled to say so. I am
briefly.
entitled to say so. You cannot kidnap the conversation.
Okay,
You're the
okay,
one
you
that's
can-
kidnapping the conversation. I'm
No,
trying to
I'm
keep
not.
the
We are organizing this and you insist on having your opinions.
but
Okay.
Joseph, it's a good example. It's a good example about Gaza. Okay, so suppose let's just we are already a government.
Let's
okay.
have Israeli parliament members voting. I'm sorry, Palestinian parliament members, please vote. And then we'll,
May I make a comment before you vote?
how about if you make comments after the vote?
Okay.
Palestinian parliament members. Okay, publish the vote. 75% of the Palestinian parliament members voted yes. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Publish the vote. Okay, yes. 85% voted yes. Let's go to the to Mr. AbuZayyad to make your comments.
Thank you. First of all, I fully support the idea of making peace with Iran, Lebanon, and Syria. I want to read the item which says, to achieve this, we are forming our own delegation to directly meet with the authorities in Israel, Gaza, the West Bank. Why you fragmentize the Palestinians? You say the authorities in Israel and Palestine. Why you say Gaza?
I'm not sure. Where are you referring to?
To achieve this, we are forming our own delegations to directly meet with the authorities in Israel and Palestine. You don't need to say Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, because if you say Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, then I ask you, where is East Jerusalem?
I'm
Because
sorry,
it's
I
also
still don't see.
Palestinian.
I still don't see
It's
where
point
we
number
are.
six. Point number six, Joseph.
One,
Point-
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To achieve this, we are forming our own delegation to directly meet with the authorities in Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. Okay, so
Why you make Gaza a separate entity? Why you make the West Bank a separate entity? Because
well,
where is
also
where
we're
is
making
East
Israel a
Jerusalem?
separate
No,
entity.
no. For me, also East Jerusalem is very substantial and very important for me. So to avoid this thing, you say Israel and Palestine. As you said in the first line, the government of Israel and Palestine.
Okay,
You say in this one, Israel and Palestine. Don't say Israel, Gaza, the West Bank.
okay. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I'll make the changes afterwards. In fact, I can make them right now if you want. Okay,
Okay, perfect.
any other? Okay. We already voted. Let's go to the next.
You need a comma between Israel and Palestine.
I'll do that after the simulation. And we have a comment.
Comma.
Yeah, we have a comment.
No, Israel, Palestine doesn't have a comma. Authorities in Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, and so on. Sorry that I'm making you some troubles. You invited me. You have to be patient with me.
I invited you, and I'm happy to have you. It's just that it's hard for me to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's go to.
Okay, excuse me. I have a question. Just a technical question. Please, Joseph, please allow this. It's not about the simulation. I think the biggest benefit of this is that many contacts can be made. And I ask, please, that you provide a list of the participants with email and numbers if they want to. I allow my number and email to be given to any participant, because I think one of the biggest benefits is that we can exchange and we can talk among ourselves. And if we do not have that, then
Okay,
we're
this
losing
is
a lot
why
of
I
benefit.
provided my email address.
No, but that you provide the list of everybody else, because many people here are changing. I ask for emails, I ask for numbers. I don't know who people are. I want a continued conversation afterwards. This is one of the
Look, I provided my email address. People do contact me and ask for names. I ask for permission, and then if the permission is granted, I give it. But I don't give it automatically. All right, let's go to our next legislation, rebuilding Gaza and Southern Israel. Charles, can you read this, please?
Rebuilding Gaza and Southern Israel. The IPC is the only legitimate government in Israel and Palestine, consisting of 300 parliament members elected by the entire population. Approximately 125 members represent the destroyed areas. The IPC is committed to the well-being of all people, including the 5 million individuals directly affected by the violence since October 7. The IPC believes that the future of Gaza and Israeli people is interconnected. It is unlikely that the Israeli and Palestinian governments will be able to restore a normal, peaceful existence in the foreseeable future in these areas. The IPC is requesting a $50 billion grant from the international community, which includes Israel and Palestine, to fund and coordinate the rebuilding of the devastated areas. The IPC will prioritize the following. 1, rebuilding thousands of homes, roads, hospitals, civic buildings, and infrastructure to facilitate the immediate return of all people to their homes. 2, restoring law and order and civil society that have been destroyed. 3, develop safe routes for peaceful movement of Palestinians between the West Bank and Gaza in both directions. To achieve this rebuilding, the IPC is calling for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate return of all political prisoners in Israel and Gaza to their homes. Both Israeli and Palestinian governments are given veto power.
Okay, so the Israeli and the Palestinian governments are indispensable when it comes to this legislation. Does anyone have any questions before we go to Mr. AbuZayyad? Do you have any questions? Sean, ask your question. Unmute.
Joseph, when you mentioned about the immediate ceasefire, to rebuild it, we need ceasefire first. But should it be a permanent ceasefire instead of an immediate ceasefire? That's it.
Yeah, but the question is, what's the likelihood of this passing if we have a total ceasefire? You may be right. I don't know, but this calls for immediate ceasefire.
No, okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Hearing no other questions, let's go to Mr. AbuZayyad. Mr. AbuZayyad, do you have any questions or comments regarding this legislation?
I have two questions. The first one, in the second line, you say approximately 125 members represent the destroyed areas. Which areas, in Gaza or in South Israel?
Both.
Both.
Gaza, in my opinion, will have about 40 or 50 parliament members, and the whole area that has been destroyed will have 125 members.
But all Gaza Strip was destroyed, about 2.5 million people in Gaza Strip.
Correct.
All Gaza was destroyed.
Correct.
And you say 125. How did you come to this number?
It's just an approximate. It's an approximate.
Approximate. Okay. It doesn't represent the reality, because if you want to represent the population, you have to reconsider the number. And my second question is that in the last item, you say to achieve this rebuilding, the IPC is calling for an immediate ceasefire and the immediate return of all political prisoners in Israel and Gaza. Why in Israel and Gaza? There are political prisoners from the West Bank.
Correct.
Why you say
it's going to be changed? You're correct.
It has to be changed. All political prisoners in Israel
this
and
legislation.
Palestine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
In fact, we can say in Israel, Palestine.
No, in Israel and Palestine. If you say Israel and Palestine, you make them one entity. You can't say Israel, Palestine. Israel and Palestine.
Any other questions? Gail? Question?
I'm just wondering if everybody here understands that if the veto power is
Well,
maintained.
Gail, you can't do that. What is your question?
That's my question. My question is that if this
No,
gets
that's not a
vetoed-
fair question. You're not asking.
You're telling me that my
wanna have a
questions aren't fair
discussion. I'm
questions.
sorry, no.
These are all really good principles.
Yeah,
if
look,
one side-
we have time for a discussion later
Oh,
on.
Joseph,
The
I'm out of
question
here.
is
This
about this
impossible.
legislation.
You don't
Okay.
allow people to ask
No, I do
reasonable
not,
questions.
because I told you this is a simulation. It's not a
But the
lecture.
veto power will eliminate all of your
We
good
already
ideas.
understood your objection to the veto power, okay? And we're moving on. All right, let's have any other questions.
Once it's vetoed, it's gone. That's my point.
We all know, we understand that. We
So then
understand
why are you allowing a veto power at all?
because they are indispensable.
Why are they indispensable? They're
Because you cannot
undemocratic.
walk
The
into.
veto power is undemocratic, which is why we're here in the
Okay,
first
fine.
place.
Look, all right, no more, no, okay, we
I
understand your
can explain
objection.
in one sentence. I can explain it to Gail because the veto power is simply because we don't have the power. We don't have the power to force anything, Israel to withdraw from Gaza, to make peace. We cannot. So that's why it is indispensable. But we represent so many millions of people, and we have only soft power, not real power.
All right, let's have the Palestinian parliament members please vote. Palestinian parliament members, please vote. Okay, publish the vote. 88% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Please vote. Israeli parliament members. Okay, publish the vote. 91% of the Israeli parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. So thank you. We're going to go into the next legislation, and that's joint economic zone. Libby,
That one didn't require a veto or a vote.
oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
You're absolutely right. Okay. Let's go to the Palestinian president. Mr. President, are you going to veto this legislation?
I'm not going to veto it, but the concerns that I did hear from some of my constituents was what about the West Bank? And I just want to say that although this legislation is focused toward the Gaza, it does not preclude that something else can be done for the suffering that's been occurring in the West Bank right now, including the prisoners and including the attacks that are happening right now by the settlers on Palestinian cities. So this is focused toward Gaza, but it does not say we should not also do something else for the people who are suffering in the West Bank.
Correct. We have different legislation on the West Bank. Like I said, we are not showing everything. We have different legislation regarding the West Bank. Okay, so you're not vetoing. Thank you so much. Let's go to the Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation? Professor?
Yeah, I'm not going to veto this, but I would like to just make a point that the entire territory bordering Israel should be demilitarized. And
you're asking for that as the Israeli Prime Minister?
Yeah.
You want Israel to be demilitarized zone?
No, I mean the areas bordering Israel, Lebanon, this Iran and other, countries.
Okay, we're asking you about rebuilding Gaza and Southern Israel. Are you vetoing this legislation?
No, I'm not going to veto.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go to the next legislation, and that is joint economic zone. Libby, could you please read it out?
Joint Economic Zone, JEZ, between Israel and Gaza. Exclusive IPC management and control in cooperation with the existing governments. Common economy. Education, industry, banking, agriculture, sewer treatment, desalination plants, solar farms, wind power, and green energy. International airport and seaport. Equally accessible to Israeli and Palestinians. We hereby submit this legislation to the Israeli government, the Palestinian governments. We bestow upon them a veto power which may be exercised in the next 60 days.
All right, so basically we are proposing to create a joint economic zone between Israel and Palestine that would include the area of Israel and Palestine in between Gaza and in the border between Gaza and Israel, with all a joint education, airport, seaport, that would be managed by the IPC. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we go to Mr. AbuZayyad? Just questions, I'm sorry, regarding this legislation. Okay, I see no questions. Let's go to Mr. AbuZayyad. Mr. AbuZayyad, do you have any questions or comments regarding this legislation?
Yes, please. I'm thinking, where would this zone will be? Is it going to be on the territory of Gaza or on the Israeli territory, or on the border, on both sides of the border between Israel and Gaza?
Exactly, on the border between Israel and Gaza.
So
50-50.
so it will be 50-50. Part of it will be from the Israeli territory and part from Gaza territory.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's okay.
All right, let's go to the Palestinian president, Mr. President. Let's go to the parliament first. Palestinian parliament members, do you please vote on this legislation? Palestinian parliament members. I don't see the vote, Dan. Okay. Do you support this legislation? Palestinian parliament members. We need 55% according to the constitution of the Palestinian parliament members. Okay. Publish the vote. 95% of the Palestinian parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the Israeli parliament members. Israeli parliament members, please vote. Publish the vote. 100% of the Israeli parliament members voted in favor of this legislation. Let's go to the Palestinian president. Mr. President, are you going to veto this legislation? Mr. President of Palestine.
I'm sorry, no, I will not veto this.
Okay, let's go to the Israeli Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to veto this legislation?
No, it's fine. No veto.
Okay. Sean, do you have a question?
Before all of this joint economic zone, before any of this, do Israel need to recognize Gaza before any of the joint economic zone be implemented? Because I think Israel should recognize Palestine first before they can have the joint economic zone.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, we are not forcing the government of Israel to recognize the Palestinian government, and we are not forcing the Palestinian government to recognize Israel. There is no need for recognition. We are not forcing the governments to do anything. We are a separate, independent government for the people of Israel and Palestine, and we are the only legitimate government in Israel, Palestine. We are dealing with those governments because we have no other choice. But we cannot force them to do things that are maybe good, but we can just not within our power to force them. All right. Let's go to a post-simulation survey. After you participated in the simulation, do you support a common federal government for the people of Israel, the West Bank and government, and Gaza, Israel, Palestine? You're gonna give it. Okay, please publish the vote. 96% voted yes, 1 person voted no, that's 4%. Apparently we didn't change their mind, that's fine. Before we go to the open discussion, I hope we can have a discussion about these criteria. If we can speak about this, can the IPC make peace? Is it attainable? Now, if you say it's not perfect, we agree, but what's the alternative? Please try to focus your discussion on these issues. Could these assumptions be achieved? And if not, why not? I'm bringing those assumptions again, and you tell me why you don't think these assumptions could be achieved or can be achieved. I think they're very easily achieved. My closing remarks is that a common democratic government confederation can make peace, and peace is the only solution. Peace is the only vision for the area. Online elections can take place. And, yesterday we had a huge fight between Israel and Iran, not to mention the fight that's going on between Israel and Hamas. They are spending $3 billion every 10 days, at least $3 billion. We believe that with $100 million, we can make this a reality. And it's very, very feasible to educate the people of Israel and Palestine on the benefit of this and to actually have the election. This is what you can buy for $100 million, or you can have peace with the people of Israel and Palestine. All right, so we're going to open now to have a open discussion and have questions being asked or comments if you want, and we'll have Mr. AbuZayyad giving his impressions and answer the questions. Okay, Gail first. Go ahead. You need to unmute.
I support most of the principles outlined here. Let me say that up front. But I have spent my entire scholarly career studying leadership and statecraft. You cannot formulate a functional state by using a veto power and by threatening to kick people out if they disagree on the vote. It just doesn't work. So those two principles that you've been using throughout this simulation basically renders it null and void. Using a veto power, if you look at what's going on in Gaza right now, the very veto power that is being used in the UN with the Security Council and all of that is what's keeping this war in Gaza going. And we already have over 33,000 people dead and many, many orphans. God knows how many orphans there are who are going to be the targets for the next round with Hamas, by the way, because parentless children are vulnerable to being recruited to violence. So this is my point, is that those principles that you are using, the veto and kicking people out if they disagree, is incompatible with democracy. With a participatory democracy.
All right. Mr. AbuZayyad, do you want to respond, or do you want me to respond?
Well, I want you to respond, but before you respond, I want to make one comment. You spoke earlier about the recognition between Israel and Palestine. I think if we are talking about a confederation between two entities, there should be mutual recognition between the two entities. Without recognizing each other, we cannot make any kind of a relation between us. This is one thing. The other thing, I must say that there is a mutual recognition between the PLO and Israel, the exchange of letters between Yasser Arafat and Ishaq Rabin, where Israel recognized the PLO and the PLO recognized Israel. What is needed now is that Israel recognize Palestine because Palestine already recognized Israel. And you should know that there is about 150 countries in the world who recognize the state of Palestine, and the United Nations recognized the state of Palestine as a non-member of the United Nations. So the recognition, mutual recognition between Israel and Palestine should be a prerequisite for any future relation between the two governments and the two entities.
All right, let me respond to what you're saying. I personally believe that the Israeli government and the Palestinian governments are the problem. They're not the solution. And for us to chase our time and to ask them that until they do the right thing, we are not going to do anything, it's just a waste of time. The federal government that we are proposing is basically recognizing that the Israeli and the Palestinian governments are total failure. The Israeli government is more so than a favor than the Palestinian government, but that's beside the point. They're a total failure. We are proposing a separate, independent government for the people of Israel and Palestine. If they want to recognize each other, that's fine. But we are not here to chase our tail and to ask those failed governments to do the right thing. It's very hard to do the right thing, which brings me to the point that Gail is making, the veto power. This is not the United Nations. This is.
But what you described as a total failure, you gave them the veto on anything decided by your parliament.
Correct.
And if they have the veto, you are actually stripping your federal parliament from its authorities.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we will become impotent. We can do nothing because these governments have a veto on everything we make.
Right.
And this is what I tried to explain in the beginning of my intervention, that you have to do a lot of homework before you start taking off in the direction of a confederation or a federation. If you want to bribe these two governments and make them happy with you, and you give them a veto on what you decide, then you have no authorities. You do nothing.
Okay, that's the heart of the issue here, and I think that democracy works on the ability.
This is not democracy. If you give them veto,
it is democracy.
On an elected body, you have your federal parliament is an elected parliament. If you give these governments veto on what an elected body decide, then this is not democracy, my friend.
Only on
don't use this argument of democracy. You used it more than once, and I was silent. Don't use this argument of democracy, because this is not democracy.
Only on
giving them the right of veto on the decisions or the laws legislated by a democratically elected parliament. This is not democracy.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
The alternative is to start in the direction of conciliation between the two governments, the two peoples, achieving political settlement.
You had that for 75 years. 75 years,
my
and you want to
God.
continue reconciliation?
No, the situation now is totally different than it was before 75
it's
years.
worse.
And if you say 75 years, with the current Israeli society, which is shifting all the time towards Khomeinism and towards halakha state and towards extreme right government, there's no room for any solution. You talk about the federation, but you should look at the reality. With these trends inside the Israeli society, all what you are talking about is under a big question mark. I'm sorry to say that, but go ahead with the discussions.
All right, so I believe it is a democracy, and a democracy has to deal with reality. And the reality is when the governments of Israel and Palestine become indispensable, then you have to deal with the fact that they are indispensable. The best way to do that is to include them into the process rather than exclude them. And the way to include them is to give them a veto power. But let's go on to Shlomo. Shlomo, you want to make your questions, please.
Two things. First, I would like to, I thought in the past, I thought that you are right, that there is no choice. We have to give them a veto power. Otherwise, they may see us as enemy and do all kind of things. On the other hand, second thought and third thought, I think we should not give them anything. We shouldn't mention veto, no veto. They would do whatever they do, and there will be conflict, but at the end, when they have the power, like in Gaza, they will do whatever they want anyway.
Then you become a subversive organization that's trying to undermine the Israeli and the Palestinian government.
Yeah, we are. We are subversive. Otherwise, we are.
Are you willing to go to prison for that? You think that Israeli and Palestinian parliament members will be willing to offer their candidacy if they can be prosecuted for being a subversive organization?
I will divert it to Mr. Ziad AbuZayyad.
All right, let's go to Monica.
Well, no, I'm not done. I'm not done.
Okay.
This was one question. The other question to Mr. is when he talks about Palestine, what does he mean? Where is Palestine? Palestine from the river to the sea, or is it like West Bank and Gaza? How do you define Palestine?
Well, may I answer the question?
Yeah, yes, it's a question to you.
Well, okay. There is the geography and there is the politics. If you speak about geography, Palestine is the area between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean. If you speak about politics, there are new realities on the ground. One reality is called the State of Israel, and the other reality is the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, which we call it the State of Palestine, and we are struggling in order to achieve recognition of the international community and the United Nations of us as the State of Palestine. We were engaged in a political process with Israel on the basis of the two-state solution, two states living alongside each other in peace and harmony on the borders of the 4th of June, 1967. For me, Palestine is the area on the lines of the 4th of June, 67, including East Jerusalem, because East Jerusalem is an occupied territory, occupied in 1967, and Gaza is an occupied territory, occupied in 1967. So when I speak about the State of Palestine, I speak about the State of Palestine and the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem on the lines of the 4th of June, 1967. I believe that the area between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean is too small for two states, and we should long for a future of a special relation between the two states, whether they will become a federation or they become a one binational state or whatever. But we should not accept two states with borders, with walls, separated from each other without any kind of cooperation and coordination with each other. This is a dream, but to reach that dream, we need to start releasing the tension and the pressure, bridging the gap between the two societies, teaching understanding and love instead of hatred. What's happening now in Israel with these crazy fanatic settlers in the West Bank, who yesterday attacked more than 10 villages, burnt houses, burnt cars, shot on the people, killed 2 Palestinians, wounded tens of people, and all this under the protection of the Israeli army protecting the settlers. These people, they doesn't encourage any Palestinian to think about peace and coexistence. Israel government is responsible for that, and not only the Israeli government, the United States. The United States is the godfather of the occupation. It is encouraging and supporting and subsidizing the occupation of the Palestinian people and the oppression of the Palestinian people.
All right, let's go to, I'll give the order, Monica, Charles, Henry,
Third question.
and
I have
Sean.
third question, very quick. To you, Joseph, do you think the United States IPC?
I'm sorry?
Do you think the United States will support the IPC?
The United States will do everything possible to undermine the IPC. The United States is the most hypocritical country when it comes to Israel and Palestine. The United States has a federal government in Israel, and it knows how federal government works. The United States support the Constitution. The United States support a separation between church and state, but when it comes to Israel, Palestine, they support a Jewish state. They support the integration of religion. So what? It's not the president of the United States understand the federal government more than all of us put together, but he's not suggesting that. So for Israel, Palestine, so they're the most hypocritical government when it comes to Israel, Palestine. Let's go to Monica, and then Charles, and then Henry, and then Sean. Monica.
Can you add me too? Because I don't know how to raise my hand. Can you add me, please?
Troy?
Joseph?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. First of all, Mr. AbuZayyad, thank you for being here today. I'm a friend of Hillel Shanker and a good fan of your work at BIJ. I wanted to say that I I love this idea of confederation. I don't know if it has to look exactly the way that we've stipulated here. I'm following it in a lot of different forms. But I do think that for two people who are so very specifically and inextricably tied to the land, this idea ultimately in the long run of a coexistence that allows each to access the land is really important. And I concur with much of what Mr. AbuZayyad just said. That said, how do we get there? It's great to start at this jumping point with this assumption we've raised money and we're having elections and we've had 5 million people vote. But getting from where we are today to that point is a very big chasm, and creating legitimacy for that is a very big chasm. So I'm really interested in how we get there. I do think that specifically today, we are at such a challenging point that there may need to be time for a cooling period, a divorce, if you will, with democracy and freedom and civil rights on both sides, but not necessarily intermingling, because I think in the last 6 months, the distrust, the hate, the anger, the hurt has just grown exponentially. The damage done is so significant all around, and I don't think it's insurmountable, but I do think it needs some time to breathe. But I'm very interested in what would a campaign look like, and with your first assumption, the money raised, if we were able to raise that kind of money, what would a campaign look like to begin to enroll Israelis and Palestinians, or I'm going to say Jews and Palestinians because there are Israelis all over, et cetera, enroll them in this idea and this concept, and to start really playing with these kind of simulations and seeing what that could look like in a real-time level. And I'm really interested in how we might get from something academic like this to something real like that, and what that might look like, because I think it's a hard climb, but I would love to see something like that happen. Thanks.
Okay, Monica, let me answer your question. The difference between this and being able to raise $100 million to do that is, in my opinion, one major article in the New York Times. That's all. One major article in the New York Times will bring more articles, will bring a discussion, and will bring awareness and the ability to have a serious campaign to raise the money. $100 million is not a lot of money, and it can be raised, but we need to have awareness before anything else, before the money itself. That would propel the whole thing. That would change reality, in my opinion. All right, let's go to Charles, and then Henry, and then Sean, and then Troy.
Hi. I think a lot of us here see the future, the ideal future that we would all like to create similarly, but it's a question of the assumptions that we enter with that causes us to differ about how to get there. And I think about the IPC is trying to take a realistic litmus of where those assumptions are within people. So for me, the idea that the PLO, or the Palestinian government, is a complete failure is perhaps a little bit inaccurate, in the sense that they were never given the autonomy that they were promised. They were always used and limited to be to operate within the jurisdictional elements that Israel would allow them. And the peoples that are believing that they need access to the entire territory, either from a sense of justice or from some sort of historical religious mandate, don't allow them to recognize each other as co-equal sovereign peoples. So this is a way, I think, of allowing people to actually demonstrate that there are those people who do recognize each other's mutual humanity and can work together, which will diminish the hatred, if you will, that is necessary for the two more extreme elements to keep reinforcing their idea of their own justification. So that's a necessary prerequisite to reach this kind of vision that we all want to go for eventually, which is that I think that every Jewish Israeli and every Palestinian, whether he's Muslim, Christian, or whatever, can move freely throughout this territory in peace and security, and have an equal command to freedom and justice. So I just wanted to say that.
All right.
And
Mr. AbuZayyad, do you want to respond to what Charles is saying?
You're muted. Mr. Ziad, you're muted.
AbuZayyad, you're muted.
Sorry. I agree with this situation which we are living. You know what? I live in a place called Israel. I'm one of the neighborhoods of East Jerusalem, but unfortunately the wall is built before my home and Jerusalem. So I have no access to Jerusalem. And during the last 6 months, I was allowed only 3 times to go to East Jerusalem for medical treatment. Today I had a stress test, and I applied for this permit since a month. And I was struggling and sending documents and papers until I had this permit that I can go to make the stress in Jerusalem. We are in a very, very difficult conditions. How come we don't have the luxury of talking about federation or confederation as long as we are under occupation? What the Palestinians they need to hear people talking about ending the occupation and recognizing the right of the Palestinian people for self-determination and recognizing the state of Palestine. I cannot understand countries like the UK or Germany or even President Biden speaking about the 2 states. President Biden is strongly for the 2-state solution. But when we tell him, okay, if you want 2-state solution, and you recognize the state of Israel, why don't you recognize the state of Palestine? No, the state of Palestine should come out of negotiation between Israelis and Palestinians. But we are the underdogs. We are under occupation. I was in the negotiations. I was sitting at the table, and across the table, there were 5 military generals. Ozi Dayan, Amnon Shahak, Speaker Stauber, all these people. And every time we come to something that we don't agree on it, they say, okay, this is what we want, take it or leave it. This is not negotiations. We need a third party to intervene and
Like
to
the
make
IPC.
a deal between the 2 sides and to make us equal partners in any future process between Israel and Palestine. As long as we are not equal partners, how come we can be indulged in any arrangement or any agreement or any process?
All right, let's go to Henry, and then Sean, then Troy, then Nasir. Henry.
Hi, I knew of Ziad AbuZayyad back in the 80s before the first Intifada, when he was the editor of a pro-PLO newspaper in Jerusalem, which was called Al-Fajr. It was published in Arabic and in English, and for a short period of time in Hebrew. And I took it upon myself as an Israeli who supported an end to the occupation, supported recognition of the right of the Palestinians to self-determination, and supported the establishment of a state of Palestine. I took upon myself to distribute that paper to newsstands in Tel Aviv. In those days, there was in the Palestinian community, as well as in the Israeli community, some belief in the possibility of joint action of Israelis and Palestinians, again, against the occupation and for coexistence in some reasonable form. I'd like to ask Ziad AbuZayyad, how do you see now the possibilities for grassroots level education and support to end the occupation and to open the door to Palestinian self-determination? How do you see possibilities for grassroots cooperation and action and education to achieve that goal that we support and have always supported? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
I don't have a good answer to your question, because the best educator is what our children see in the street. When they go to school, when they see the checkpoints, when they see the violence of the settlers, when they see the bad treatment of the soldier and the border police, this is the educators. You want us under occupation to make peace education. How can we teach our children about peace while they are under the boots of the soldiers? I think it's a big question. In spite of all these things, at this moment now, my granddaughter is with a joint choir, Israeli Palestinian choir, traveling across the United States, playing music and singing together. And yesterday they was in Washington, D.C., and today they are in Boston. Before that, they were in Los Angeles. We try to encourage our young generation for joint activities. I was all the time involved in bringing Israelis and Palestinians together and to try to promote dialogue. But now, Israelis are not allowed to go to the Palestinian side by their own government, and Palestinians are not allowed to go to Israel. And we can do nothing in this regard. I told you, for the last 6 months, my office is in East Jerusalem, the office of the Palestine-Israel Journal. And we are working only online from our homes. We cannot get together in East Jerusalem. Myself and Hillel Shinker and Suzy Becher and all the other Israeli and Palestinian friends who are involved in the work of the Palestine-Israel Journal. We have to think about how to change the political reality. And changing the political reality, believe me, the United States can play a historical role in bringing Palestinians and Israelis together. We are talking about a federation or confederation between Israel and Palestine. I would say that it should be a confederation between Jordan, Israel, and Palestine, not only Israel and Palestine. You know what? Today, if you see the Israeli media is speaking about the role which Jordan played last night in shooting down the Iranian rockets and drones which were fired to Israel from Iran. And they were very surprised about the terrific, beautiful work which was done by the Jordanian Air Force. We need to build this kind of relation between the three entities, Jordan, Palestine, and Israel. But you cannot do this as long as the Israelis say that we do not recognize Palestine. There is nothing called Palestinians. All this is the land of Israel, and we are the chosen people, and the Tanakh gave us this land. The changes which are happening now inside the Israeli society are very dangerous. Believe me, they are very dangerous for the Israelis themselves. Because there are now Israelis who I speak with them, they say we are thinking about leaving Israel. Because what is called the legal reform, you know what it is? It is only to open the road to legislating anti-democratic laws in Israel by a religious Knesset. So our reality is very bad. It's very sad. It's very depressing. We need the United States to do something. Unfortunately, they're doing nothing.
Mr. AbuZayyad, you're speaking about a confederation. I assume you mean confederation that will be created by the governments of Israel, the Palestinian government, and the Jordanian governments, correct?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
and there should be, the three governments should be on equal footing,
Right.
recognizing each other, having normal relations with each other.
Okay. Now, the Israeli government has been a failed government for 75 years. Do you see the possibility that it will change and become create a federal government above its authority to make
No.
peace?
No, no.
Okay. So
Listen,
what would be the
if you-
constellation of the federal government
listen,
created by the
just a
Israeli
minute.
government?
No, I want to tell you, Israelis are very sensitive to the United States. They care much about what the United States think, what the United States do, and they know that without the support of the United States, their existence is in danger. And here comes the power of the United States. If they want to make peace and end this conflict, they can do it. If they don't want to end this conflict, they will not do it. Now, where are we going from here?
All right, but you're not answering my question. You're bringing the United States.
No, I told you, if it is left for the Israelis themselves, there will never be peace with the Palestinians.
Okay.
Because they
you want
deny
the
our
you want
existence.
the failed Israeli government that has been failing for 75 years. You want the failed United States government that has failed, not only failed, but gives weapons.
No, they failed.
to-
They failed because the United States is supporting them all the time.
Fine. But the
If you-
United
if you
States
use
also
your
failed.
special
But the
relation
United
with them,
States
don't
also
change
failed.
them.
The United States.
If you want to make them a success, change your attitude towards them.
Fine.
Use
but,
your
but
special
they,
relation
but they
with
haven't
them
done it
and
for
influence them.
75 years. They
Because
haven't done it.
75 years you were doing nothing.
Yeah.
75
It
years, the
doesn't
United
matter. For
States was doing
since
nothing.
the creation of the state of Israel, the United States government has never suggested a federal government, had never pushed for a federal government. The Israeli
I'm
government.
not talking about
Well, you said a federal government.
I'm talking about peace between Israelis and Palestinians, which will open the road in front of us to go towards the federal government.
But you suggested a federal government created by the Israeli government, the Palestinian government, and by the Jordanian government. I am focusing
I
now
said,
on the Israeli government.
No, you can't put words in my mouth. I said that this kind of federation should be between three governments on equal footing, recognizing each other and having normal relations with each other. How can we have normal relations between Palestine and Israel? It's only if we come to a political settlement. How can we achieve a political settlement? It's only if the United States use its instruments which can change the Israelis and make the Israelis accept to recognize Palestine and make peace with the Palestinians. As long as they are enjoying your political support, your financial support, your military support, everything in all areas, you support them, you encourage them, you support their occupation, why should they agree with you?
Let me ask you in a different way. Are you suggesting that we stop our effort to create a federal confederation government for the people of Israel and Palestine that would be independent and separate from the Israeli and the Palestinian government, a government that will be independent of those governments, will be created by the people of Israel and Palestine? Are you suggesting that we stop our efforts to do that?
No, I don't suggest to stop your efforts. I say you can work concurrently on two parallel tracks towards developing and promoting the idea of the confederation, and at the same time promoting and developing the idea of conciliation and peace between Israel and Palestine.
All right. Okay, thank you. Let's go to Sean, then Troy, then Nasir, and then we'll go to the second Sean, go ahead, Sean.
According to what Ziad was mentioning about bringing peace to the Israel, and I understand we're here to bring peace with Israel and Palestine, but from what I understand about what Ziad was saying is that there could never be peace, because if Israel cannot recognize Palestine, or they're doing any reconciliation, or U.S. will stop, like U.S. will support Israel regardless if it does something good or bad, like there's never going to be peace. And he's mentioning that before we can make peace, we have to do these things first before bringing peace. Like I understand you want peace, but there's other thing that comes with it, like just giving them peace like that, I don't think it's going to work. There's other factors that needs to be implemented with it. That's according to what Ziad AbuZayyad said. So is this correct though, what I'm understanding, Mr. Ziad? Because you think we should implement these things, and we don't have that kind of that power, but we can only do the power of peace. But yeah, according to what he mentioned to me. So is this true, Joseph? Like we need to do other things other than peace for this to happen, because there's no way peace alone can do this to this problem with Israel and Palestine.
Are you asking, is it true that we have to wait until the Israeli and the Palestinian governments make peace before we create a confederation?
Like, no. I said we should work parallel tracks to develop and promote the idea of the federation and recruit more and more popular support to the idea, because it is very important idea. And at the same time, promote peace, because if we make peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and we have two governments recognizing each other and having normal relations between each other, they will be more supportive to the idea of the federation and more cooperative with the federation government.
I don't disagree with you, and that's acceptable. That's, I am saying let's do what we need to do and let them do what they need to do. We're not trying to dismantle what they're trying to do. I just don't see them ever. These are failed. It started really, if you want to go to the bottom of this, Mr. AbuZayyad, the idea of Zionism is not to have Palestinians as part of Israel, which they call Israel and Palestine. The idea of Zionism is contrary to the idea of peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Because Zionism needs enemies, okay? Without enemies, Zionism does not exist. And the idea of making peace with the Palestinians would nullify Zionism.
Joseph, when you mentioned that
you are taking us to a very complicated discussion, and I would not advise you to go to that way, because if we start talking about Zionism and peace,
well, we have to speak the truth.
But I want to make it more simple. Zionism is a colonial movement which came to colonize Palestine, and they used the Jewish religion and converted it to become a nationality. But what happened in Israel now is that there are now new generations in Israel who are more attached and committed to the religion than they are committed to the Zionist movement.
True.
And the liberal Zionists who established the state of Israel and thought about building a socialist liberal country, they are now shrinking and becoming a minority. And what is becoming stronger and more dominant is the crazy fanatic religious people. And they will make the coup against these Zionists, and Israel one day will become another kind of Daesh. If you don't understand this, you don't know what is happening in Israel. If you don't understand this, you don't know what's happening in Israel.
I understand this. And
what is happening in Israel, believe me, what is happening in Israel, we have a Daeshi government in Israel, Daeshi trend. Now, these people now are grabbing Netanyahu from his neck because Netanyahu wants to be a prime minister. He cannot be a prime minister without Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and all this gang. And they are using this thing to develop and push Israel more and more to the area of being fanatic religious state.
Yeah.
To stop this process,
Everything you say support the idea of creating a federal government independent of the Israeli and the Palestinian government.
Yes, and you give a veto to the Daesh country to veto everything you decide in your parliament.
Because it creates because it creates a different reality.
No, you cannot create realities.
It
The
does.
strong
It
reality
does.
is those who are sitting on the ground.
No, it does. I'm sorry. If we have Palestinians and Israelis together voting for a separate independent government, that is a different reality. You cannot
But there is someone who's vetoing what they decide, vetoing what they do.
They cannot veto legislation that would expose them on because the reality that they have now, the constellation of relations that they have now is basically Israel versus the Palestinians. We are creating a completely different constellation of a different political reality in Israel and Palestine that is common to the people of Israel and Palestine that would undermine any other discussion that is exclusively the discussion Israel versus Palestine. It creates a different scenario, different political discussion.
Isn't there a speakers list?
Well, if I may say last thing, I said more than once that I am in favor of the federation, but not in the way you are presenting. We need many things to be done before it is happened. Honestly, I had a very long day today.
All right.
I started my day in the court. I had 3 cases in the court. I finished the 3 cases in the court. And then I rushed to do my stress test. And then I came back home. I did not rest even for 1 single minute. I feel that I did my job.
Yeah. And now we're putting you on the
and now I just want to thank everybody who was listening to me. And I hope that I did not offend anyone in this panel.
No, you were wonderful.
And I want you to excuse me and let me go to rest.
I'll take it off you. Say it, Ziad.
I have one question, Ziad. Excuse me, before you leave, sorry. It's just a clarification of what you said before about the 2 states. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, you said, I just want to be sure because I happen to be in Strasbourg. You know Strasbourg, you're at the Council of Europe, and I feel nobody is talking about the most incredible historical experiment in human history, which is that we have made peace between France and Germany after 1,000 years of war. And because mostly the Americans are driving this process and Americans are ignorant of history, especially European history, they don't realize the precedent. And so I want to ask you, Ziad, when you say the 2-state solution is irrelevant because we don't want a 2 states which are just side by side and not cooperating. I understand that, but
he did not say that.
But he said that. He said that. You can look back at the recording. I know very well. He said if they're not cooperating, but if they are like we did in Europe, where you have in France and Germany we have 2 states, but we have literally no border. We have agreements. We have a common parliament. We do have 2 independent states, but we have still equal rights, and we even have European citizenship. We have something which is incredible. So do you agree that this could be a model that we still have 2 states, but 2 states within a larger political framework like we have in the European Union?
Well, I said that the two-state solution is not realistic anymore, and we have to be more creative in our thinking about the future relation between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I said that. Now, why I said that? Because if you speak about a Palestinian state and the territories occupied in 1967, along the lines of the 4th of June, 1967, and you look on the ground, there are now more than 500,000 Jewish settlers inside the West Bank, where the Palestinian state should be created. How can we create a Palestinian state in the West Bank where there are 500,000 settlers, and in East Jerusalem where there are about 200,000 settlers? So what we need to think about is something like for example, like Belgium, something, I don't know, I don't have a formula for that. But I tell you, the classical thinking, the traditional thinking of the two-state solution is not realistic on the ground unless there will be a leader in Israel who will have the courage to evacuate settlements which are deep in the heart of the West Bank and enable that there will be a room for a Palestinian state. We are becoming like Northern Ireland. You mentioned France and Germany. You are right. You are right. If you look at the history of France and Germany, how they were fighting and now how they are cooperating now, you have some hope. But in our case, it's different. Our major problem is the Jewish settlers inside the occupied territories. They are the Protestant settlers who were brought 200 years ago by the UK to Ireland, to Northern Ireland. It is very complicated. I don't have the solution, but I tell you, if we want to speak about a future relation between Israelis and Palestinians, we have to be more realistic, more creative, and think how we can do it. Can we divide the total area between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean to small cantons where some cantons with Arab majority, some cantons with Jewish majority, and with a federation between these different cantons? It needs some constitutional experts and political experts who can think about how to create a kind of peace between the two peoples. Otherwise, we will continue killing each other, destroying each other, terrorizing each other. It's terrible.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. And my
Okay,
question,
thank you,
I'm sorry to
Joseph.
end with this very pessimistic comment.
All right.
I wish you good
Thank
luck.
you,
I
and,
wish you a nice evening. and
Sorry for
goodbye.
the additional stress we caused you, and thank you so much for
It
joining.
was not a stress. I enjoyed very much talking with these nice people.
Thank you
Believe
so
me,
much.
I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. You were very
Thank you,
generous.
Ziad.
And I learned a lot from this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah.
And
Thank you
Joseph,
for
I
your
just have a
All right, let's
Joseph,
go
I just have the
to,
technical. No, Joseph, I just have the technical question. When did you start the IPC, and how many people, different people total, have participated? Just technical questions.
started it in just 20, I believe, just after the turn of the century. So it's been around for almost 23, 24 years.
And how many people have participated in it? About, just, I mean, you have an idea?
In the simulations or in the?
Yes. Yeah,
In
on
the
the online, in the simulations, yes.
In the simulation, I would say several total for probably between 1,000 to 5,000.
Well, that's a big gap. Well, how many thousands would you say then?
My estimate would be 2,500, 2,500.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
In the simulation, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Troy, did you want to make a comment, or and Nasir?
Well, I just want to say that in general, we should look at what Ziad told us is very important. He told us, look at, you have to think creatively, he told us to think of cantons. Now, cantons, if for people don't know, are an idea which is in Switzerland. Switzerland, you have cantons of Francophone cantons, Germanophone cantons, Italian cantons, even a Romance canton. So you have 4 different groups. So that's, and you have a confederation. So that's one model. You have the European model, European Union model, where you have different states, and we have it's not a real confederation, but it's a sui generis invention. We have a commission, we have a parliament. So that's also very interesting. I think we have to look also here, it's possibility. In Northern Ireland, he spoke about Northern Ireland. Well, in Northern Ireland, how was peace made? And here it's relevant to what Joseph was doing. Peace was made in Northern Ireland through a bi-national, or here bi-religious democratic assembly. You had Catholic and Protestants, and the peace was made finally in the so-called Good Friday Accords. And you have you had 2 countries, Ireland and Great Britain, and you have 2 religions, like you have 2 religions in Israel and Palestine, and they made specifically a parliament, which was 50% of each religion. So that's another model, and it's beyond the normal, let's say, federation model of the US, which is about 250 years old. So we have to look at more models than the ones which is only the US model. Northern Ireland, European Union, Switzerland, maybe others.
All right, let's
Thank
go to Nasir. And then Gail, do you want to speak again? Okay, Nasir and then Gail.
How about me?
Oh, Samir. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can't miss you. Okay, so you'll speak after Gail.
No.
Nasir?
He left, I think.
Okay, let's go to Gail. You need to unmute.
Hi. Okay. So a couple of things. First of all, we need somebody, or a couple of people made the point that we need to build community soft power on the ground in Israel, Palestine, because Israel currently is the proxy of the United States. The United States is not interested in Israel and Palestine being at peace. It is so clear from what we are experiencing now with Gaza. The US is not interested. They want Israel there to be their proxy, period, full stop. Secondly, the concept of the chosen people. The chosen people concept came from God's covenant with Ibrahim, which means that all of the children that came from Abraham are in that covenant. All of those people are the chosen people, which means Jews, Christians, and Muslims. So that whole concept needs to be rejigged. And I've talked about that in my research as well. And secondly, and thirdly, to that point, there are 3 religions in Israel, Palestine: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We cannot forget Christianity, even though they're a small minority at this point, but they're there. And I have a friend who has family hiding in the church in Gaza right now. So there are churches in Gaza. I know that there's a Hasbara that says there are no churches in Gaza. It's not true.
Okay. All right, let's go to Samir, and then we have 19166059134. Samir.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Hi, Joseph.
Samir, make it you.
Yes, definitely there are churches in Gaza, and it was hit by the Israeli forces, by the IDF in the last 6 months, and they killed 17 Christians inside the church, 17 Christians. So that's a fact. We know that. Now, coming back to the whole discussion, I still think, after all, that the best solution is one secular democratic state, because we avoid all of negotiations and transfer of population and
I agree.
all of that. I mean, we should just push for that, I think. All Palestinians, Israelis, Jews, everywhere, that's the best solution. And it will stop, I mean, it will end the occupation, it will end apartheid. It might, I mean, take, I mean, years to develop, but still it is the right track. We have to start today, and probably it will take 5 years, I mean, to happen, but I mean, we have to start somewhere. But going around, I mean, about the
Samir, can I ask you a question on that? Can I ask you a question?
No, on that I don't have a question, but
No, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I agree, totally agree with you that the best solution would be one state, no question about it. And I also think that it should be one government with no other government, one secular government under one constitution, one constitution for everyone, secular constitution. You're nodding your head in agreement. My question to you, Samir, how do you dismantle the Israeli and the Palestinian governments in order to create one government?
Well, it is easy and simple. I mean, you just need a brave, smart Israeli leader to come up and declare that Palestine is one democratic state, just like what happened in South Africa, and it should happen.
And you need also you also need one brave Palestinian or two brave Palestinians.
Well, there are many brave. I mean, there are a million brave Palestinians around who will say yes for one secular Palestinian state.
Okay.
I guarantee you, Palestinians, not just in Palestine, all over the world, everywhere.
So
they will go.
Let me ask you a question
about it.
Let me, until we wait for that one brave Israeli leader to declare the dismantling of his government.
Yeah. What should we do? Well,
should we stop our effort to create a common federal government for the people of Israel and Palestine?
No, we should not stop, and we should pursue it as of now.
All right.
You have, I mean, a pro-democracy movement, and that, I mean, it stopped because of the Gaza war. But after that, this pro-democracy movement, it should grow towards the one Palestinian, one secular democratic state. I mean, the reason that this pro-democracy didn't go further because the Palestinians inside Israel did not join it, and they were away from it. So
nobody asked
that
them.
will be the next step. I mean, that the Palestinians, Israeli, what you call them, Palestinian Israelis, and Israeli altogether, Israeli Jews, all they have to come together to make change in the government, which is coming anyway. The change is going to be coming. A new election is going to be coming, and they should all participate, and they should keep the pro-democracy movement right after this war ends. That should start to make change in the Israeli government, and that will be the future, to prepare for the future of one secular democratic state. That's the only solution. I mean, you cannot do it other than elections, and elections is the key here. I mean, because we are
Yeah.
living in a country called itself democracy. Okay, democracy, then we'll go with the election.
May I suggest something?
All right,
Sure.
let's go to the person on the phone and then you show.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay.
The person on the phone, 19166.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so my name's Cassandra, and this is actually the first Zoom meeting with you that I've been able to log into, and it was great. I'm really appreciative that I was able to observe a little bit. There was an earlier question that was inquiring if it would be possible to get a list of different individuals' contact information to be able to engage in these types of conversations offline. And so I just wanted to make a suggestion for you to consider. Potentially, like I am unable to see the Zoom because I called in, but I could hear that you did several surveys throughout today's simulation, and you already have your email list. If you did do a survey in the email list that you already have of people that were willing to engage in some type of WhatsApp group or a Facebook group to have these continued conversations, then people could give their own permission to be able to distribute those contact information, because I think what everyone's talking about here is extremely beneficial, and I really appreciated AbuZayyad's comments on different naming conventions and how important that is. And yeah, I think being able to engage in these conversations more offline could be great. So that was my only comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say we have a WhatsApp group, and you can send me a request. My phone number is 818 area code 324-3182. We have a WhatsApp group, and we exchange information. And it's so again, my phone number is 818-324-3182. You can send me a request to join the group, and I'll or you can email me to joseph@gmail.com, phone me, email me your phone number, and I'll join you in the group. Okay, Shlomo, and then we have to go. It's
11:30.
Yeah, but quickly, we can make a legislation. I mean, we start with so just one legislation instead of all the others, and which say we are to vote for one state from the river to the sea with equal rights, and that's it. All the other legislations are becoming like derivatives of that one. That's all.
Yeah, that is a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, but then the question is, what's happening with the current? Does that are you ignoring the current reality if you have that vote?
Well, everything we do here is ignoring the current reality. The current reality is very simple. Is one nation is trying to exterminate the other. That's very simple. So that's the reality. If you want to deal, so in any case, we are a little bit utopic, but one state, you know, it's becoming more and more and more convincing to many people from all the spectrum. So
That's true.
maybe that's the ultimate, and go directly for the ultimate solution.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to thank you all for joining. I enjoyed the conversation, and hope to see you in our next simulation.
All right. Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.